So I'm Josh Kinal. I'm a designer from Melbourne. I've started calling myself Joshua because it sounds more respectable, I think.
Joshua.
Yeah, but
Okay.
everyone calls me Josh. You can call me Josh.
I'm Sudhakar. My nickname's Teddy.
Teddy.
That's what I was popularly known. So I'm an engineer by background, and somewhere on the first year of engineering, I came across this thing called design.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be in engineering. In India, it's a thing, right? Everybody has to some professional course. Parents push you towards it. I wanted to be a writer at that point in time. And then my dad said, okay, be a writer, but first be an engineer, and then you do whatever you want. Fortunately for me, in engineering school, I heard about this thing called design, got curious about it, and then I think probably from the first year I was already targeting design as a postgraduate thing. So I went to design school after that.
I feel like maybe we had the same father. Because I wanted to. I also wanted to be a writer.
Okay.
I wanted to be a novelist or a journalist, but more like a Hunter S. Thompson journalist than a traditional journalist. And my parents were like, "No, you said one day when you were a kid, like just one day when I was a child, you wanted to be a doctor. So you should be a doctor. You're going to be a doctor. What kind of life is a writer? Be a doctor." And I looked at all the doctors that I knew, and they were so sad in their lives, and they worked so hard. And I was like, no, this is not what I want to be. But I was still really interested in science and biology, and so I ended up doing science at uni, becoming a molecular biologist. But I didn't continue on with it. I had also, because I wanted to be a writer, worked at the student newspaper, and that was where I learned design. So learning layout, back in, this is, I tell, the stories that Grandpa tells. We used to have to print out pages in A4. So we had a printer, we could print out pages in A4 and then run them through a waxer that would put wax on the back of them, and then put them on a paste-up board and cut them out with a scalpel and paste them out.
And use white paint to the edges, right?
Or red tape if we wanted to have a black line, blue pencil to
It was totally analog those days. Even if you wanted to kind of have let's say a logo type done, you bought transfers. Those transfers.
Letraset.
Letraset was a company.
Yeah, so we would do headlines.
I wonder if Letraset still exists. Probably they do.
Letraset. But is there a need for it? There must be. I hope.
Still into type design or type foundry kind of work.
Yeah. So from engineering, you got into design.
Yeah.
And what sort of design did you get into? I know that you built these chairs.
Yeah, the logical progression then was product design.
Mm-hmm.
So which is consumer products or industrial products. And of course, there's nothing called interaction design then. And the human factors we learned at that time was the classical economic thing, right, which is anthropometry and force application and those kind of things. From a little bit of display and control.
Yeah.
That's about it. There's nothing called cognitive ergonomics, then the cognitive aspects of ergonomics. But then we did hear the word cognitive ergonomics because we had an ergonomist who said, hey, this is going to be the future. Cognitive ergonomics, right? And for us, it all sounded so futuristic. This is 1991.
Mm-hmm.
So when he mentioned the word cognitive ergonomics, it sounded so futuristic. Cognitive, something for the brain. Ergonomics is, makes you comfortable, right? Or makes it easy to use. Or something about comfort. So brain and comfort and, ergonomics, economical way of doing things. Brain and economical way of doing that. That's the kind of connections we're building. That's far out and that's going to be somewhere in the future. So he said, in your lifetime, you want to you will be expected to practice that, is what he said. And he wanted to include it in the curriculum then, but the college wouldn't allow him. He said, hey, look, it's too far into the future, and I think you're far ahead of your time. In 1991. And then we said, we were curious because it sounded interesting, and we said, can you take? He says, I'm not allowed to teach you this, but you come to my house in the evening between 6 and 8, and maybe we'll discuss cognitive ergonomics. And we actually went for about 2 to 3 days, and he talked to us about things, none of which I think we understood. But we just retained the word cognitive ergonomics. And in about 7 years, it all made sense. 1997, when I started my own software company.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the first thing you have to start with. Cognition and, cognitive ergonomics and those principles and heuristics became so standard and so matter of fact. It's just 7 years away. And, And now I teach cognitive ergonomics. I teach.
So cognitive ergonomics is not a term that I've heard before, just now.
Okay.
But it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And it makes so much sense to what we do. And that as designers, we're designing for brain. So like I learned with human computer interaction, designing for just before the web got big. So like the web existed, but CD-ROMs were still how we would disseminate large amounts of information because the bandwidth wasn't there. And the human-computer interaction and how people used different pointing devices, how people worked with the keyboard and with the mouse, and what if they didn't have a mouse, they had a trackpad, or what if they didn't have anything, and then started getting into assistive devices and how do people work with assistive devices. So always working on this, almost like the physical ergonomics of interacting with pixels. But the idea of the cognitive ergonomics,
because initially, right, I mean, what the computer was essentially supposed to do was increase productivity in the office, right? So the ergonomics was applied for that, just like earlier. Earlier, ergonomics was applied to make work faster and a little less strenuous for the worker, right? But now, it is on a computer, and again, how can this user of the computer be more productive? Which is basically data entry those days. Those days, you were a data entry operator. That was the big job. Typists became data entry operators. You needed typing speed to become a good data entry operator. And some knowledge of files and stuff. So you had these early models called keystroke model, how to analyze, at a stroke level. How do you analyze, thought and action? And then there was something called GOMS, goals, operators, methods, and selectors. Operants, selectors. So there's another theory that came along. This is the early keystroke. These were all oriented about, increasing productivity of using the computer for word processing or maybe spreadsheets or something. And later on, of course, then Don Norman came and he started talking about gulp of execution. The 7 stages of interaction model came. And that sort of, I think, took it to another level of thinking about.
Yeah, and it's when Don Norman and Nielsen.
Jacob Nielsen.
So Don Norman and Jacob Nielsen started coming out with all of their tests and their examples. It was the first time for me that it was an extension of, I knew about print design and I knew how people relate to the printed word and how they read. But the only interaction there is this, right?
Yeah.
So you know when to turn the page, or when to jump up to the next column. Like you make all of this really obvious. But starting to learn from them about how to actually make it obvious that there were actions beyond reading and turning a page. was fascinating
Yeah.
to me, and I followed them kind of religiously until I started to realize that they weren't as right as they pretended to be. Like Jacob Nielsen was so
Yeah, he was
strict.
purist. He was a purist.
Yeah.
Some of his rules are broken now, I think. Some of them, but not all. I think they're still relevant. Some of them are relevant today. But what they did, I think, see, the thing is, from core theory, something that's core theoretical like cognitive ergonomics and that level of understanding interaction. What Nielsen did, I think, the big thing he did was to make those principles, the 10 heuristics, right? 11 heuristics. Designers at least have to follow the principle. At least they should have. I think the requirement is, at least the hope is, an academically trained designer has internalized those principles.
Yes.
And so when he's designing, they're sort of guiding his actions and decisions. The non-designer is using not principles; he's using thumb rules. Do this, don't do that. Right? So he picks up a whole bag of thumb rules to use. So he's a little more rigid. The non-designer is a little non-academically trained designer is a little more rigid that way because for him it's just a set of thumb rules he's using. But if you're using a principle, then you can even challenge the principle at times, like you're saying.
And this is where I think Jared Spool comes in with his theory that I've argued with him a lot about, where he says everyone is a designer. And I keep pushing him on that. But he is steadfast. He believes that everybody makes decisions about the work that they do. And if you make decisions about the work that you do, you are a designer. It doesn't matter if you're an analyst or a manager or a developer. You're involved in the production process and you're making a decision. You are a designer. And I think it has good poetic merit, but doesn't necessarily translate to the encouragement towards thought that I think he's intending. And so
he is right in a way because I think everybody designs. Like Herbert Simon says, anybody designs who sort of, changes something, an existing condition to a desired condition.
Yeah.
It's as abstract as that. So, everybody is a designer, but this is a big argument, right, end of the day. I mean, I feel there is still an edge in, internalizing the principles and then making a decisions on that because, see, the thing is you're not only kind of designing for optimization, you're also designing to push the limits.
Yes.
Right? So you can do it intuitively or you can do it informed, with some sort of, theoretical basis for why you're doing that. And I think, doing it in a more informed manner is a little better than intuitively doing. I think today, I guess, even that's being challenged, because, okay, I can design intuitively and test and still maybe I make the same progression and change or doing something new.
So I think this is where, I don't know, so culturally, speaking, I come from Australia. We're both in India at the moment. In Australia, people are really, we don't have a big inventor culture because everything's so easily available. If you want something, you can buy it. But Sid introduced me to the concept of jugaad. And jugaad is just what we used to call hacking back in the day, but it goes back a lot further. Jugaad to me is like pure design, taking things that already exist and repurposing them to benefit your life is like one of the purest forms of design for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. So non-designers do jugaad, and you hear and you actually see amazing adaptations via the jugaad method of doing things. But I've also seen a designer take a Jugaad product or a Jugaad solution and then, add another layer of value over and above that. So probably that's where the academician comes, right?
Is that refining?
Refining and the detailed level stuff.
Design is is truth made real.
Okay.
Right? So you take the truth of anything that you're trying to do and you embed it in the thing that you're building. And there's that level of, and so this is the honesty, the truth of this one situation. That is pure design, which is, not my theory. It's Bauhaus's theory. It goes back a long way. But when I think about it in terms of what you're talking about, where it's like a designer takes something that's Jugaad and refines it, it's like there are levels of truth in what you're building, right? The truth is, I needed this function, and so I built this thing. But then you can refine truth, refine that honesty, and find a purer form of its purpose. This has gotten very academic.
Yeah, it's sort of actually solving one of my dilemmas. Because a year ago I defined design as, I thought I've been trying to define design for a very long time.
I think we all have. I think
everybody, all designers have been trying. Yeah. In fact, in college, I do an orientation for the newcomers to design school, right, in NID. And I attacked the whole question of what is design another way. I said, hey, look, let's sort of do a tack like they do in sailing.
Yeah.
Right? So just go laterally, so a little side, and come back to us. So definition from the side rather than a direct definition. Where I said, instead of trying to define what is design or what design is, let's try to say, what are the preoccupations of design, right? And then I came to 4 preoccupations of design. That's my whole presentation. So that's another story. But what I defined about a year ago, it's on Facebook. And I said, hey, look, I finally cracked it. Design is a craft of refinement. And that's my online PhD right there. And it stood for a while. And, I told it to my students, and they kept challenging that definition everywhere. Every conversation, every discussion, every time they're reviewing on a product, they said, refinement, that's what it is. And it stood the test of argument for a very long time. And one day it failed. When they said, what about innovation? Right? So, but now you're giving me a way out of the whole thing, because we're saying, hey, look, this is not a step, innovation is not a step ahead. These two sort of play a wrestling match, right?
Yeah.
Refinement and innovation are both sort of wrestling with each other. They're just going round and round each other in a way, so it's not that, okay, is this separate or here? So the Jugaad is innovation, which can come from wherever. This is refined. Or you refine, you innovate and then refine. So both go hand in hand. So there is also that component.
Well, yeah, innovation is it's like a multiple step refinement, right? So it's a leap ahead, but you're still taking a pre-existing idea.
It is. See, the thing is, when you have that, that idea, the genius idea, the eureka moment, if you can call it, of getting that idea. Today, that is still the magic, right? We don't know where it's coming from. The designers are better equipped to innovate not because they're unique they have a unique set of skill sets or even an aptitude. It's because the mind is trained to do that more often.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think at a neural level, they are reprogrammed to think integratively or, synthesize things better or take two ideas from there to there and then join them into a creative solution. So the designer, by virtue of having gone through this system of training, is mind. So he's doing it better. So I don't know if it's design as a discipline that is responsible for innovation, but a designer as a professional, I think, is pretty actually gets more capable of innovation.
That's fascinating, because while you were telling me that, I was thinking about how it reflects on me, because that's my nature. Because talking is the opposite of waiting. But I was thinking about something that actually happened yesterday at work, where I think a lot of people have come to rely on me and say, okay, I have this problem. How do I solve it? And they sit and they watch me think for 5 minutes. And then I go, okay, you could do this, or you could do this, or you could do this, and come up with all these different ways that the problem can be solved. And I'm used to that. And I understand, yes, I'm trained in thinking.
You sort of self-trained yourself now, to think like that. The whole thing. And that can be actually democratized, actually. Right? It can be taken out there for everybody, actually. At a school level, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. But yesterday I was in a meeting. They brought a problem to me, and for an hour, I just kept saying in different ways how I don't know. This is a problem that I don't even know if it's actually a problem. I don't know if it needs to be solved, but I know that there's pressure to solve it. And I felt, for the first time in a very long time, I was like, I don't have an answer. And I think unfairly, a reputation of people thinking that I always have to be right. And my argument is always, no, it's not that I always have to be right, it's just I often am right. And that's just how it happens. When I'm not right, when I don't know, I think this is also part of the designer's responsibility, is to say, I don't know. Yeah. And I don't know, but let's find out. Because design isn't just that refinement or having that process embedded in us through lots of training. It's also the knowing when we don't know enough and doing that research.
The 90s, they were actually working on our sensibilities of, let's say empathy maybe, or observational skills, sensitizing us and making us highly tuned to see things in a different way or reframe things in a different way. Not through methods. They were not, today we have a lot of methods, defined methods with titles saying this is a method. We didn't have that. It was just a broad process with activities, right? And these activities are essentially facilitated by today's method of, let's say, fly on the wall. We have a label called fly on the wall observation. Those days we observed, as simple as that, right? But these methods, I'm beginning to buy into the methods story, right? I mean, I'm beginning to buy into the power of the method today. And of course, we had people from the old school type of teaching, and then I'm old school, but then I've imbibed a lot of these new things. So I said, hey, the design process has to get a little bit method driven, and they said, oh no, that's too technical. That's the word they use, right?
It's not creative enough.
Yeah, it's not creative enough. And in design school, anything technical is okay. That's the thing, which we are above or ahead of, or someone else will do it for you, right? But I think my methods do help too. And I don't know where I was going with, but I bought into methods. I'm a big fan of methods today.
I think I can expand on that. It's through personal experience. So much of my design training has been my design training. I had some when I learned screenwriting, because I still wanted to be a writer, even after all that. I still wanted to be a writer. So I went to screenwriting school, and then I started learning to write for multimedia, which then became the web, and how to write stories. And so I've learned a lot of my design processes from science and from storytelling. But in the last 10 years, I started playing baseball. And I'd never played any sport as a kid. I was always terrible. I always saw them through the science lens that I learned in university, or the storytelling lens that I learned through writing. But it wasn't until I started playing baseball that I had an actual understanding of what methods were, what practice was. I was an asshole as a kid, right? And I mean, not horribly, but to my teachers, because everything came easily to me. So I never did that practice. I never did the training. Maths was easy. Writing was easy. And so I did everything last year. When I started playing baseball, when I was 34, and I'd never done any sport before, I had to learn how to throw. And I could make contact with the ball and the bat, but it would never go anywhere. There was no distance to it. I had to train my body to act in a completely different way to how it used to act. And that only happened through repetition, through doing it every week, training twice a week, being taught by like little kids, 11-year-olds were teaching me how to throw properly. They're like, oh no, you have to flick it out of your finger at the end, or you're not doing this right.
Yeah.
And two things from that. One, accepting that humility of here's stuff that I don't know and I'm not good at. But two, I really understood the reason behind methods then, because you build through the methods, you work the methods, and only once that you've done the methods enough that they become inherent in your action.
In a way, like principles.
Really innovate.
In a way, like principles, right?
Yeah.
Because again, we're talking about something more structured, and I'm absolutely buying into that. But what I did last year, I'm going beyond the method to the process too, right? And I began to realize the process was important. In a way, let me explain that a little bit. So every year I take up a topic to research and present. And last year, cognitive ergonomics is now moved to a new sort of an argument, or at least a more advanced interpretation called embodied cognition.
Okay.
So where they're saying it's not just the brain being a superpower and it's directing the body and brain are equal, and both contribute towards perception. So body plays as much a role as brain. I wouldn't know exactly in terms of percentages how much. Nobody knows that yet, I guess. But the body does play a role in aiding perception and even creating biases, perceptual bias. And not only the body, even the environment. So I said, okay, if body is influencing the mind, then is there some way of coupling both and saying, because for us, the Eastern philosophy, for instance, or even religion, we're all trying to merge this mind-body duality, right?
Yeah, this kind of holistic.
Yeah. Try to see, try to be in the moment and mindfulness and all that stuff. So I said, can we bridge the mind-body duality by design? And I started looking for examples of, where this design started, using the body in a very conscious way of design. Not anthropometrically, where it was just accommodating the body. You're using the body, right? And I came to a lot of findings. There's one studio which does something called design for friction, where, for example, you were going out and you're trying to take a key, right? You have the option of taking a car key or a scooter key or whatever. So you take the key and the other key automatically falls down because it's levered, which makes you bend and realize the fact that, you're going to pollute the whatever. The driving you're going to do has a carbon footprint or something, make your value.
Right, so creating friction
Yeah.
to change your behavior.
Yeah, not change behavior, but at least kind of, point it out to you at that point, right? So, but it's a body that's real, it's not the mind.
Yeah.
Right, because you have to bend. They're trying to influence the body. Our body, they're trying to use the body to influence the mind.
Right, that's, yeah.
So there are a lot of examples of that sort, and there are a lot of things, dance therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy also uses the body a lot. A lot of examples I came across. But my realization was, I garden a lot, like you've seen, and I was trying to weed under a lemon plant, right? It's a small lemon plant, one day. And lemon plant has thorns. And it was summer. And by the time I could get my hand through and, pull, and, like I was in a frantic mode of trying to weed, and I'm sweating there, and I've been pricked all over my hand, and the whole thing was really stressful. Gardening is no fun.
No, and that's why I live in an apartment.
Yeah, I'm trying to weed a lemon plant. You know that, all the romance of gardening is gone that moment, right? Then I said, oh my God, I have to garden. It's just like it's not that I can't have a gardener and just pretend to be a gardener. So I went, sat down, took a deep breath. Okay, how do I get it? I have to weed this lemon under this lemon plant today. How do I do it? Then I planned it out. I said, okay, first my knees were all, I had to kneel to the feet. So I put, some cushioning for my knees. And then since my hands were being pricked by those thorns, I took a forceps kind of thing, a tong.
Mm-hmm.
And I went there, kneeled delicately, inserted this, and did it a little more methodically. And I turned out to be much more productive as well as efficient in doing that. And there was no all that stress, I actually got a, sort of stiff neck in the earlier instance of trying to weed because, there's so much stress that generates because you need to get there and pull that plant out. It was much more easier and, it was actually, I began to even enjoy it. So I realized the power of process, of processifying activities. And I think, we're into something really big there is what I was telling my students when I made this presentation. Because, when you processify, I think, you can make things which are chores a little more accommodated and even fun maybe, because you start getting, it all even becomes pleasurable, because it's a motion you're doing and then you start refining that motion and there is always improvement and there's reward and sort of gets gamified in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
And you really enjoy it. So process is a big part of this mind-body duality merger by design. So process is another important.
Process is vital, and this is something that we try to teach other professions, like the other people that we work with.
Yeah.
When they talk about design thinking, so it's a term that I hate, but I also understand. Like people need a shortcut into what it is, but it's not design thinking. It's scientific thinking. It's this idea of we have something that we think is a problem, and we need to go through a series of steps to work out if it's a problem, and then if it's a problem, how do we solve it? And the opposite of that is hacking, right? But not in the poetic sense of hacking, like Jugaad, but when you actually literally just go through and hack, which is what you were doing, right? You were forcefully getting the weeds out. And it was taking longer, it was more painful, and you weren't getting the enjoyment out of gardening that you got. But if you had originally dedicated the time to the process, and then everything would be much quicker, easier. And that's where we talk about value, we talk about values. And I think it's one of the reasons that people think designers are like magicians. Is because we come up with these ideas and they can't see where they come from. So the next challenge for us is making that visible. All of that thinking time, all of that reflection time, we have to make that visible so they don't think it's magic. They understand, it's hard work.
It can be done, I guess. All those connections, connecting the dots, even in hindsight. Because while you're doing it, you really don't know where it comes from. But in hindsight, you can connect the dots. That's true. That's really nice. I think that will sort of explain design, I think, in a much better way. Showing where
the ideas come from. Well, it's like when we used to learn maths in school and they used to say, show your work. It's like, now that's where that comes in handy.
But with this whole design thinking buzz that's going on, and like you said, I think another problem I think we are going to eventually, I think, face is, I think maybe this whole process can also get trivialized. What I'm trying to say here is, see, earlier in the 90s, design had a lot of bad press. because design was seen as a layer of value over and above what an object essentially did.
Mm-hmm.
Right? A camera shot photographs, right? And it worked well. Okay, that's the camera. That's the camera everybody wanted. Design was seen as something that added a layer of value on top of that camera and made it expensive.
Yes.
Right? Actually, design had a bad press in the 90s for a while. Before, then they said, they started redefining, where design comes in and stuff like that. I think that way, see, design doesn't seem to have many success stories also, right? When you look at in isolation, it doesn't have. Maybe in with other disciplines, and when something happened together, maybe it has. In isolation, it doesn't have a lot of success stories because styling, again, bad press. They make it beautiful to sell, right?
Yeah.
And which is the aesthetics of it. And of course, we have to redefine aesthetics itself, which is what I did a year earlier before this mind dual
was redefining aesthetics.
Yes, saying because what we consider aesthetics itself is a word.
Mm-hmm.
And it's no longer, form and appearance and unity of form. It became semantics a little later. That was again sort of in the 90s. Semantics became expression through form. But then cognition is coming now. You can make something aesthetic, which is what happens in interaction design a lot, but other disciplines are not. Because something is judged to be beautiful because it is just right or happened well, happened contextually correct. It doesn't have anything to do with, appearance or, it's just a behavioral thing. The user expected something and, he was delivered what he expected. That's a cognitive level and he likes it. You think, hey, that's beautiful. That's actually a romantic concept. Right? So that came to the cognitive dimension. And now, of course, we're moving even beyond cognition to embodied cognition, which is where the body, more immersive sort of appreciation of things. And today, neuroscience is being brought into design. So I guess that's a neural level of trying to kind of define experience and aesthetics. It's already happening, I guess, in gaming and so aesthetics is that's. But I make this statement too. You can challenge me on this. I think this is a great talk. I say without aesthetics, there's no design. And there's no design school, in fact. As a matter of fact, there's no foundation course, there's no design school, there's no this person called a designer without aesthetics. Aesthetics are part and parcel of what you deal with design. But not aesthetics, not in terms of color and layout, right? It's also cognitive.
I think it's probably a good point to end on. But so you say without aesthetics, there's no design.
Yeah.
And I think aesthetics are a byproduct of design. I think good design does something to our brains or to our bodies or to our whole cognitive understanding that we interpret it as aesthetically pleasing, even though we might not be able to articulate it. I think they're two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. You're saying the aesthetics is a byproduct. I'm saying aesthetics is a purpose.
I think on that disagree. This has been so enjoyable. Thank you very much.
That's a lovely talk.